Welcome to Momentum Monday. Today is April 20th, 2025. Happy Easter to everyone celebrating. Howard?
Big Jewish holiday.
Yes. I have no
Okay.
idea, but
I
I,
was just watching some hockey. All right, let's let it rip. Futures down Monday, long weekend.
yeah, about 0.5% futures down, but gold's up again. The US dollar is down again,
Is
and
US dollar down? Bitcoin's up.
but this time Bitcoin is, trying to catch up.
Good news, Ivan. I think Bitcoin not going down is good news. If you got gold and Bitcoin, gold kind of caught up to Bitcoin over the last year now in terms of a yearly gain.
Yeah,
And obviously supply is so different.
and now we're starting to see Bitcoin kind of setting up for a potential.
Bitcoin and MicroStrategy. There's a few things setting
Yeah, I
up.
mean, they're related. Anything related to Bitcoin, like I
Yeah.
mean, that will include Coinbase and Robinhood probably. They also want to get a
Yeah,
bounce.
well, yeah, I'm going to meet Michael Saylor on. I'm speaking to meet him on Thursday in New York.
Great, great. I
Yeah,
mean, he's been one of the, first, major
I think what's
investors.
interesting about MicroStrategy is not so much the valuation of it is how would you go replace buying 500,000 Bitcoins, assuming that you trust what's going on there. And it seems like there's no reason to lie that he's been buying them. Um, how would you go out and buy those? So I think that just the strict, it's kind of like how do you value Spotify or Netflix? You can't, on any kind of reasonable user metric, they're overvalued, but the replacement cost is high. So, I mean, it's pretty fascinating. So I have a lot of questions for him on Thursday.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh, okay, let's
I
walk
think
through.
today I would like to talk about stocks and sectors showing relative strength because we saw that during that last phase of the latest sell-off, everything really went down, including gold, including consumer staples and utilities, like in the past few days of that sell-off, which only showed us that those past few days were like forced liquidations, like people sold because they had to. But then
Hmm.
during the bounce, we saw, gold miners, the groups that held the best, they bounced first, they make new 52-week highs first and outperformed during the
Sure.
past couple weeks, while the QQQ is just meandering and showing relative weakness. And last week it opened up, and then whole week it's been just being sold.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some exits out of many of those Magnificent Seven stocks year to
Yes.
date and lately. But a few trends that kind of are standing out, and some of them might be longer term, and some of them might be very short term. Like, for example, rare earth metal stocks. Like China produces 60% of the world rare earth metals and refines about 90% of them. So they kind of have cornered the market, and those metals are used in almost any major equipment, high-tech equipment. So it's a really important source. And in the US, they're not, and since China is now in a trade war with the US and they're curbing and they're introducing export controls on those metals. And in the US last week, we saw a big move in stocks that are related to rare earth metals. Like MP is basically the only one that has an operating business. A big breakout, then, but it's kind of very volatile and still holding above its 50-day, and long term is a bit volatile. But it's one that I'm paying attention, and then a smaller one that is like a recent SPAC. I don't even know if they even have an operating business, but it doubled last week. So that's definitely a trend that the market is paying attention to. And those are the two of the main players if it continues, if the trade war escalates in some version.
Well, there's also obvious Greenland, which has obviously got rare earth. That's why America's you can keep an eye on who. who's been buying in Greenland. A lot of tech bros supposedly have been investing there, and then obviously Ukraine has a lot of rare earth.
Yeah, I mean the supply, the potential supply is significant. The rare earth metals are not rare at all. Like almost every country has them, but very few
But
countries.
setting up distribution and mining of them is
Yeah,
not.
it'll take years to, to extract them and to refine them and to invest in that.
There's not enough here for most people. These things are thin, so yeah, if you can nimbly trade them, great.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, for me, this is a very speculative trend, and it might be very short term.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll be a long-term trend. And the other one is that is showing another group that is showing relative strength is foreign financials.
Yes,
Here's
Indian banks. Indian
not
banks.
only India banks, but we talk about them too. Here's the European financials, quick bounce and almost back near their all-time highs here.
Those are all-time highs? Holy no.
Yes.
Wow.
And
Wow.
especially considering that, they're talking that Germany is already in recession. And yet, that exodus of money out of US
That's further proof that there's money coming out of the US.
is looking for a place to go. And it seems like foreign financial stocks are benefiting. And yes, you also mentioned India, Indian banks. IBM is one of them, new all-time highs last week
Yeah.
after better
That
than
trend looks
expected,
a little more, again, not for
better than
me. That looks a little realer, more real.
better than expected earnings, but also some of the banks in South America, like we're talking about the Argentine banks, they found support.
And Argentine banks are doing better than America.
Yeah, but they're doing better than
It's
anything
just
really, right?
dumbest.
This is Colombian bank, it's not
A
looking too bad.
Colombian bank is doing better than the US. I love that.
Yeah. So I think this is, a major trend that is kind of developing, and it's not new. Obviously, we saw that relative strength ahead of the big sell-off.
You know,
But now it's kind of confirming because it's also one of the first groups to really bounce above the 50-day
sure.
and even make new 52-week highs. And there are a lot of individual stocks that are in that group. I mean, we have Mercado Libre also, the eBay, the Amazon of Latin America
Sure.
showing strength. We saw Netflix on Thursday beat earnings estimates, trading above 1,000 in
Yeah.
the pre-market. I don't think that breakout is going to follow through because lately, typically in bear markets, breakouts don't follow through. They last a day or two and then they fizzle.
That's what I'm careful of.
But
And you see utilities kind of breaking out. So
utilities are strong, but and also consumer staples, which is just telling us that the market is pricing a potential recession, but also gold, Bitcoin going up. So it might be not just recession, but also a little bit of higher than expected inflation. So I
yeah,
mean,
people following the text, people that are great traders following the textbook here, and piling in. I don't think it's very hard for people that are thinking 30 years. If this is really a deglobalization trend, and it sure does look like it, then yeah, you're going to have to readjust. Everybody's just over-owned tech, right? And you're seeing the unwinding, right? Like if you put China on an island, they've already proved with DeepSeek and Tencent and TikTok and robots, and then BYD that they've matched us, if not surpassed us, in tech. And so I don't know what truly the strategy is, right? The strategy, if I'm in charge, is to like let America compete, not kind of close down. So it just feels like the opposite strategy. And I think a lot of big money, the only way to get out is to sell Mag 7, right?
yeah, they're the most liquid, yeah.
Well, it's also if you sell treasuries, if the Chinese are selling treasuries, which I'm sure, who knows, but I doubt it, is they're self-owning themselves. And to be honest, considering the massive sell-off, like treasuries are doing what they're supposed to do. Their rates really aren't. They're just kind of treading water. It's really showing up in the dollar and in the Mag
Yeah, the
7.
dollar is down significantly.
And the Mag
Um,
7, and like you said, European banks. Those are like big, like in foreign banks. If you're going to hide out,
I mean, personally, I'm surprised that big money is hiding in, European treasuries because most of them are yielding between 0 and 2%. US treasuries are yielding 4.5.
yeah.
So
That's what I'm saying.
doesn't make sense to me, but okay.
People are not fleeing U.S. treasuries. I think there's like a lot of false narratives out there. Um, I think they're selling Mag 7 for fundamental valuation, U.S. reasons. So even if Trump undoes this, the damage done to a lot of American brands, like it just makes no sense. Like, so what? You and I travel back to, well, maybe not you, you're Bulgarian, like theoretically, but what? So we don't let Europeans into the country and we're tougher on them, and then what? So that makes it life easier for me to travel? Like, it's just a cell phone. Right. It's just a punishment and a tax on every American. Yeah, I mean, America's big and I can travel inside the United States, but it just feels like we're starting fights. We kind of knew if Trump is correct, he knew who the enemy was. I didn't need to hear about it. They could have, anyways. This is real at this point. Like,
It is real. I read a statistic the other day that 90% of all jobs come from small businesses, and also a significant portion, more than 50% of the capital capex spending also comes from small businesses. So it matters. The tariff matters because big companies, can easily survive them, but many small businesses might not be able to. And
one of the great things about deglobalization, that is too broad a name for it, is America got benefits too. We could leave and travel and global entry and feel not harassed when we went within reason to friendly partners, whether it's Canada or Europe and even most of Asia, right? So, and Central America. And now it's just like a reordering of things, which I think Americans just don't understand how much freedom they had when they left the country, forgetting about within the country. So, as someone who's worked hard to make some money, that's a big freedom that the whole family gives up. But he's president, and that's the rules, and I have no idea how. I'm not going to get myself. There's a lot of extra risk out there, not just in the markets.
I mean, yeah, we can say so, but this is a show about the markets. And let's
But what else? Palantir's working a little bit. CrowdStrike.
Palantir definitely one of the growth stocks that is showing strength. But as I said, in this environment, I'm a little bit careful chasing strength
Yeah, we
in
chased it,
growth
but I'm saying
names.
that if we're going to start working, that's looking like a leader. Uber's looking like a leader.
I mean, Palantir is a it's a cybersecurity play, and cybersecurity, defense in general, as we talked about it last week, are definitely one of the sectors showing relative strength. You can see here that global defense
Yeah,
ETF setting up near its all-time high. So yeah, this is one of the major trends.
CrowdStrike as well.
Yeah, CrowdStrike is part of that ETF too.
Oh, it is? Okay. So yeah, so I'm saying some of the stuff makes a little bit of sense. The question is, like you said, in a bear market, growth stocks
Yeah, the
generally.
market always finds, the potential future winners after the initial forced liquidation, panic selling is off. And we saw a little bit of panic selling a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And now that the dust settles, the market is slowly trying to highlight the potential winners. And some of them will be short term, as I mentioned, the rare earth metals probably, who knows? And some
Yeah.
of that might be longer term,
Yeah.
some of the foreign stocks.
Yeah. Pessimism continues to be really high, which is, it can be bullish. But then I saw that like it was the rush into leveraged ETFs by retail. So it's just a lot of mixed signals.
Yeah, I mean, there are always mixed signals. And if there weren't mixed signals, if everything was pointing bearish, probably it would be very close to a bottom.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but I still operate from a viewpoint that we are in the midst of a bear market. And I mean, when you have the averages below a declining 50, declining 200-day moving average,
Yeah.
below, declining 50-week, it's like, I think, the common sense thing to do. But I do trade on the long side, when I see setups, they're just shorter term trades. Like when I enter them, I don't expect to hold them for multiple weeks because of the type of market environment we're in. I know it's a trader's market and you need to be nimble in this tape,
Yeah.
but also, other approaches work well, like what you did a couple weeks ago when you were buying the big dips in Robinhood and a bunch of others.
Yeah,
That's also working.
I took that trade off completely. Like I said, I'm trying to find things that are like bulletproof, and nothing's bulletproof, right? I guess, especially I like growth. So I just got to be like, I think in my degenerate economy ETF, I'm like 18%.
I mean, you must be really excited because last week what we saw that Webull went up,
Yeah,
it
but
was
I
a
didn't know that space too well. I don't know what the
huge,
float was, but yeah, I mean, it's a
I mean,
fraction of the
small,
size of Robinhood
10
and
million.
trillion of the valuation. So people are willing to speculate.
Yeah.
And that goes to my degenerate economy thesis. People will be back, but if you pound them over the head with bad policy that's not for growth, they will disappear. So I do worry about that. I mean, they're a sucker, but they're not dumb, right? Because they're a degenerate economy. So I do worry. I think it's okay to play defense still until
Yeah, it's
basis.
okay. I mean, I'm a, long-term, medium-term optimist, and I think that things will turn around and common sense will prevail. And
I do worry about that. Common sense has not prevailed.
eventually, not immediately in the short term, but
Yeah,
eventually, not
yeah,
too far in the future, maybe a few months from now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right now, earnings are going to be, I just think the long term is driven by
I don't
earnings.
think anybody's caring about earnings, like because they reflect the past quarter. Everybody's going to be listening to the conference calls and what the companies are guiding, and some of them are not even going to guide.
That's what I worry about. You need guidance for the market to work, right? Right or wrong, you need guidance. And you just very hard. Once people reposition, it's very hard for people to get bullish again, right? Because you got to trust that like companies are going to be able to report, and everybody's got to figure out what's their exposure to China, how fast they can move stuff to Vietnam. This is just not easy.
I mean, even if you move stuff to Vietnam, Vietnam is still using a lot of resources from China to,
That's what I'm
uh,
saying. It's just and just different cash outlays. I'm helping a few companies think through this, but what would this is something that I didn't have to understand. I mean, they're throwing COVID at us, and they threw inflation at us, and then they're throwing deglobalization at us. And I've been around a while, but those are like a
it's a
lot.
bit surprising considering that the last time such big tariffs were introduced were, 1930.
Yeah. You
And
know the playbook. It didn't
we
end
know
well.
what
So
happens. And if you know the
it,
playbook, why are you doing it? It doesn't make sense. But
because it's what populism is, Ivan, and doesn't mean it's the right policy. It's about getting elected, and he only needs probably 30% of people around him to try to make a run for it the next time. But if you think about what the last tariff run was, it was about saving agriculture, which was about 25% of the economy when they put on the tariffs, and now is about 1% of the economy. So, 100 years later, it didn't do anything.
yeah, back then, most countries were self-sufficient. There was not very much trade
It's
going
also the
on.
war ended, so America didn't have to ship food everywhere to Europe, right? So it
But
was just bad policy,
the
policy,
consequences
policy.
nowadays will be a lot worse. So I
Yeah,
think common
but
sense will prevail at some point.
yes, let's hope. But hope is not a good strategy, so I'm on your side there, Ivan. But I think like the panic definitely was there. It didn't
Yeah.
now or though, but like if you look at Meta, Ivan, it's already kind of below.
I mean, are we surprised? Because the biggest
Well, I'm just
really,
saying, like, we're not getting the bounce from the big guys, right?
yeah,
So get that. Like the S&P is still 5-6% above the last week's or a couple of weeks
no,
lows.
yeah, not Meta, not Amazon. And
Yeah,
as we
not
know,
Meta, not Amazon, not Google.
the biggest spenders on Meta and on Google are the Chinese companies and
That's what I'm saying.
Amazon.
So it's a cell phone. Like, hey, it was a great way to break up the Mag 7 without even going to court, which is just bizarre. They found a new toy. It's very powerful. Like weaken the dollar and people will pull out of US stocks. So losses become real when the dollar goes down with your losses in stocks if you're a foreigner. So, but I think until we start really seeing multiple companies break those lows, but I'm watching Meta the closest, right? Because they have the theoretically the easiest business to run, right? Software, no hardware. And now here we are,
Yeah.
and where's the next stop? 400? And then
I
you've
mean,
got,
it's looking heavy, it's showing relative weakness. You can see here the relative strength, how it's declining.
yeah. So I'm saying there's plenty of liquidity there for people that like international people that want to sell on Amazon, Google. It's just so easy to hit the bid. And that's interesting about the European banks. So that's where they're hiding out. And just don't know why they did it. But anyways, all right. Have a great night. I have
All
everybody be
right, Howard,
this
thank
week.
you.
See everybody next week.
See you next week.